We all are only 1 degree removed from knowing someone who is being impacted by workplace violence or some form of online exploitation. This issue filters into employee wellness, impacting engagement at work. Let's bridge this gap by bringing awareness and education to these pressing issues and shield the vulnerable. Welcome everyone to another amazing episode of Shield the Vulnerable. Today's guest is super special to me, not for a variety of reasons in the work that he's doing, but he's a former LA police officer, 21 years there. It's Vic Dominguez. Vic, thank you so much for being here. We got a lot of really cool things here that we're going to talk about today.
Well,
Your
thank you for
career,
having me.
yeah,
Appreciate the
absolutely.
invitation.
Absolutely. Your career, it spanned over a lot of different areas. You worked in tourist hospitality crimes, street crimes, focusing on assaults, car break-ins, and thefts. You were a part of the 1984. Yeah, we're going to date you a little bit there with that.
Uh-oh.
But you were part of the 1984 planning group for the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. You
Right,
worked in labor relations when the National Football League had the Los Angeles Rams. Actually, they still do. They're back there now. When they went on strike,
right,
you worked in sex crimes. But here's
right.
where I really want to hone in on. And I
Mhm.
invite our viewers here. We're going to cut in shortly here with a really awesome promo video for this. You were part of the founding team with two other detectives from the Boise, Idaho Police Department on the Idaho Internet Crimes Against Children Coalition. So
Correct.
before we go any further, we're going to stop here. We're going to play a video from them, and we'll see you when we get back.
The Idaho Internet Crimes Against Children Coalition has a single vision: to protect Idaho's children from internet predators. Every child in possession of any device with internet access is a potential victim of child sexual exploitation material, sextortion, cyberstalking, child enticement, or sexual abuse by internet child predators. Our goal is prevention through awareness and education. As a nonprofit, the Coalition utilizes current and retired law enforcement officers and qualified professionals to provide training through two educational settings. First, our cost-free public outreach program provides Idaho's children, parents, schools, and community members with age-appropriate information and resources designed to help protect children from becoming victims of internet crimes. We know a child's best protection is awareness and active vigilance by parents, teachers, leaders, and all caretakers of children. Second, our law enforcement program equips local agencies to knowledgeably identify reported predatory behavior, collect and package evidence, and file crime reports to apprehend and prosecute sexual predators. Where possible, the Coalition provides law enforcement agencies with cost-free investigative hardware and software needed to successfully conduct these criminal investigations. Child predator exploitation through the internet poses a serious threat to Idaho's youth. Will you help us protect Idaho children against these despicable internet predatory crimes? Volunteer or give today at www.iicaccoalition.org.
Awesome video, Vic. So you're the executive director of the IICACC.
ICAC for short.
Yes.
Yes.
Amazing. Vic, how did you go from police work in Los Angeles? You really had no direct relation to working in internet child sex crimes. How did you get from that point to where it is what you're doing now and in alignment with two other Boise, Idaho police detectives?
Well, Dave, I have to be honest. It was really a chance meeting that occurred shortly after I moved here. I had joined the Boise Rotary Club. I was in Rotary in California, and the two detectives happened to have come as guest speakers to one of our meetings and addressed the issue of internet crimes against children, um, which was a real eye opener for me. And they also alluded to the fact that they were attempting to or had established a nonprofit where they were soliciting support for the effort to promote education and awareness versus just going out and trying to make arrests. Because they determined that that was a more effective tool or approach to try to make a difference in this criminal activity. So I jumped on board and helped them put it all together, and the rest was history.
Yeah. So fill us in. Tell us a little bit more about what you do, how it works. I know you're involved in a lot of different things, like, helping fund a lot of different things, electronic sniffing dogs. We're going to talk about that.
Right.
But I know that you guys try to maintain being a face to the public on successful arrests and convictions on these types of crimes.
Correct.
Fill us in. What is everything that you guys do?
Well, it started out focusing on going out and doing presentations to the public, to the schools, to organizations that were out there, that were civic groups, that we could promote, again, awareness, and through awareness, prevention. But as unfortunately or fortunately, the issue of the activity that we were seeing began to expand, we also came to the realization that we needed to be a little more creative about how we went about addressing this criminal activity. And yes, part of it did ultimately turn into not only supporting a what we call electronic sensory sensing dog canine program through one of the local agencies, and so we fully support them, and they are critical. They're a relatively new development in the field, because previously, when these predators were identified, it would mean that there would be a search warrant conducted by the officers and detectives of the residence, of the workplace, about wherever they determined that this was occurring. And they were limited to what they could find as humans, where this evidence might be in the home, in the business. But what was also apparent was that these predators had developed the ability to secrete a lot of the evidence that we would normally use for prosecution into hiding places within the location, that typically in a search of the location by humans would not be
Mhm.
discoverable. But then it turned out that dogs became capable of sniffing out the odor that these devices generate, and would
Really?
be taken into the search warrant location and turned loose to start sniffing and seeing what they could find. And when they found something that was, for example, secreted behind a wall, was potentially behind an electrical outlet, they would alert. And when they alerted, that gave the officers the opportunity to search that area. And
That
many
is
times that's where it was.
Wow. That's wild to me. One, like, I mean, everybody's familiar, and I mean, I worked along police canine dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But this was even new to me when he introduced me to the idea. Like, in general publics, they're aware of drug sniffing dogs.
Sure.
They're aware of canine dogs to do tracks for suspects and everything like that.
Right.
But their ability to actually smell an electronic device
Mm-hmm.
is mind-blowing to me.
It is. I mean, it's the advantage, if you want to call it that, is when you talk about, for example, a canine unit with law enforcement to go and attempt to apprehend a suspect, or in a foot chase, release the dogs. They're
Yeah.
usually German shepherds and those types of aggressive dogs. The dogs that are used in this role predominantly are Labradors. Sometimes they're a dog that is a breed that is like a family pet. And
Okay.
so, besides the ability to do the searches and detect those devices with those dogs, the secondary benefit from them is they become emotional support dogs for the victims, and
Really?
even for the officers, right? Because They're typically very loving dogs. There's no issue about petting them if people are around them. And just because of the closeness and the sense of, I guess you would say, comfort that these dogs emit, that a lot of the victims would just go over to them and start petting them and seemingly become calmer and more capable of cooperating and working with law enforcement on the investigations, just with the dog present.
Is there a different ability with these breeds compared to a shepherd or, Malamute or something else that a police service would use in their actual search capabilities? Is there something to do with the breed, or do you, are those breeds used more primarily because of their comfort
Right.
and support, emotional support that they can have, and that you're just able to train them to be able to do this?
Right. Well, and they are as professionally trained as the attack dogs. There's a specific location. It's a school where these dogs actually are trained to sniff out the electronic devices that they're searching for. And then
Mhm.
agencies go to that location, purchase the dogs, get trained on being a handler for them, and then bring them back to their jurisdictions. And the dog we are working with and are supporting was the first dog in Idaho to be used in this capacity. Now there are a total of 3 dogs in the state of Idaho. Another agency that serves another part of the state has one. And recently, the state attorney general's task force acquired their own dog. So the availability is growing, and it is something that clearly is a benefit to law enforcement in investigating these cases.
Yeah. Now, you guys are using these dogs. Are you finding that other jurisdictions, other states are using them? Is it something unique that you guys have brought in through ICAC? Is it like how is this becoming more commonplace across the nation?
And yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, it is nationwide.
Yeah.
Once, obviously, this capability was made available, um, in every state, there is a task force that specifically investigates, arrests, and prosecutes these predators. And so, literally, in all 50 states, there is a need for this, and they're being used in many of those states. I can't say for certain that all 50 are doing it,
Hmm.
but the vast majority have come to recognize the value of the dogs as a tool.
Yeah. So what are you seeing then across, comparative from Idaho to other parts of the country? I mean, there's so many similarities, but what do you see? I mean, and you and I have talked about it, Vic.
Right,
There is the amount of task forces that you can have, unfortunately for this, can never or will never be enough.
right.
That's how pervasive these crimes are in every single community. It's unfortunate, and I hope that we see a day where we can eradicate it and eliminate it. But what are you seeing across, with your other counterparts across the country?
Well, I think the unfortunate part is the growing need for this type of expertise, this type of focus in terms of investigations and prosecutions, because in spite of all the efforts that are being made and all the arrests that are taking place, this continues to be a growing crime problem that
Yeah.
has evolved, unfortunately, into, in some cases, younger victims. Used to be you could depend on the fact that they were uh, teens or preteens that were involved in this, and now we're seeing these types of activities occurring against infants and toddlers, and unfortunately, it goes beyond just sexual assault. Now we're seeing activity involving torture and even the killing of a victim. And so it's quite perverse. It's become very present both on existing internet services as well as in the dark web.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the contact that the predators are making with victims are still occurring through the more commonly recognized what we call social apps or social applications that are made available out there, like Facebook and Snapchat and those types of things. So, as much as law enforcement is making an effort to try to make a difference uh, in terms of enforcement, in terms of arrests and convictions, and there a lot of that is still occurring, and but the reality is, unless we can promote and really make an impression on kids and their parents and adults that take supervision over these potential victims to be aware,
Yep.
to learn what's going on, and then also to learn and have tools that they can use to try to prevent their children or children they're familiar with from becoming future victims.
Yeah.
That's
And
really
this is,
only answer for that.
well, and this is the one link that I'm trying to always help people understand. Because so CSAM, or child sexual abuse material,
Right,
looks differently now than
right,
it did even a few years ago with all of the apps that are out there and social sites. But help for our listeners, help us draw the correlation between, CSAM material or a child being groomed on a platform, and then how that can, in turn be turned into that type of material. I mean, there's so many elements to this crime. We're not going to sit here and dissect
right.
and say, it can happen over here with a child who's being harmed inside their own home, or video, having
Correct.
video or photo taken.
Excuse me.
But
Right.
between the youth who, start sharing their own and then ends up being, sextorted online.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other challenge in this area, is that there's a variety of ways and crimes that are being committed against children that um, number one, law enforcement needs to be on top of what's going on and be aware of it. But secondly, I think that it's tracking what the patterns are that are being seen. The most common is a predator that gets on an app, pretends to be a child, and then develops a relationship with this child or the victim child over the internet, and many times they're games and that they play together, and they befriend kids who are most susceptible to potentially being attracted to meeting a new kid at
Mhm.
first and making a new friend. But then they once they arrange to meet personally, by the time that happens, the child has been so ingrained with the idea that not only is this a fellow game player, but this is almost literally a friend that they can trust and that would not do any harm to them. So even when they meet and they realize it's an adult and not another child, there's a tendency to still trust that adult without worrying or considering the potential that exists with a sexual predator that's an adult. And obviously, predominantly they're males, but there are also females that are engaged in this type of activity with young males. When
Mhm.
we talk about some of the behavior that kids find themselves engaging in child to child, some of that lends itself to being targeted. A couple of those are cyberbullying, which we address as well, where it's a very cruel and very insensitive way to attack another child and to do it anonymously and to make that child even more vulnerable to a predator. Another one is sexting, and
Yeah.
sexting has become very common and even is down to middle school children who are accepting that sharing pictures that are obviously sexual in nature that expose themselves physically and sending it to boyfriends, girlfriends in anticipation that that's going to solidify that relationship. And as it turns out, in many cases, when the boyfriend, girlfriend break up, then usually the boyfriend will distribute the photos and videos that the female victim has sent to him. And that's another form of really sextortion, in the sense that they're
Yeah.
sharing it and getting kids to know and to be able to harass the child that's in there. I don't mean to go on and on.
Yeah, no, I think it's important though for listeners, right? No matter who you are, whether you're a workplace executive,
Right,
but you could be a parent, or you could be have nieces or nephews or a grandparent,
right.
right? It's important to know and understand these things go on. Like I know when I got into this line of work after leaving law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
started talking to a lot of parents. And there was so much, applause in a sense of this is work that needs to be done, and it's such a
Mm-hmm.
great thing to do. But then on the other hand, it's you get people not really acting on proactive preventative education because they go, well, it's probably really not going to happen to me. And parents just don't realize how easy it can happen. These are crimes that like they don't discriminate based on demographics, based on race, based on
Right,
sex, based on where you live. It doesn't
right,
matter. It can happen to absolutely anyone.
right,
Um, and where I'm, an area that I'm really passionate about when it comes to this is starting to help draw the link and being, I don't know what the right word is, but a proponent for showing that this is another form of human trafficking. It's digital trafficking because
right,
it meets those elements where there's fraud, force, or coercion, where
right,
somebody is being forced into sharing images or having their video taken, and then it's being distributed for a monetary gain of somebody else. And so just because I may not be being sold for a sexual purpose,
right,
an individual isn't, which would be common of trafficking, or, you got labor trafficking and all these other things.
right.
It's digital trafficking. And the victimization is real. And there's also a direct link now between somebody who is a victim of this, but a higher likelihood of them actually now becoming a actual trafficking victim where they are actually
Right.
now being sold to somebody else day in and day out for a sexual
Right.
purpose.
Absolutely, and that is the obvious potential for this type of activity, especially now that we've identified there are literally organized criminal gangs who are capturing some of these images and then also transmitting an image, for example, to young boys, because young boys have
Mhm.
become quite the target, teenage young boys, and they send a video or a photograph of a female that's about their age exposing herself. And then that female supposedly asks them to send a corresponding picture back to them. Well, it
Mhm.
turns out that many of these females have been posted by criminal organizations. Many of them are based around the southern coast of Africa.
Mhm.
And what they do is once the boy sends anything of a sexual nature, photo or whatever, they then begin to extort that boy. And they
Yeah.
tell them, you're going to pay this much money, you're going to get a gift card, you're going to find some way to um, pay us to keep us from distributing or disseminating the image you sent to us, to your
Mhm.
schools, to your families, et cetera, et cetera. And um, and then if the child cannot pay with any type of financial compensation, then they extort the child to do more poses, to send more
Yeah.
revealing photos and videos. And so it becomes a never ending battle and a never ending almost vacuum of this type of thing going on. And ultimately, many of these young boys, 14, 15 years old, wind up committing suicide or attempting suicide because they'll never go to their parents and say, this is what's being done to me because I sent the picture. They'll never tell anyone else. They try to handle it themselves. And before they can do anything about it, it just becomes such a serious problem for them that they feel the only way to put a stop to it is to end their lives. And
Yeah.
so,
You know
yeah,
what I found really interesting once when you're talking about these criminal organizations, and a lot of them are on that south or that southwest coast of Africa,
right.
is that a lot of the, I don't know what you want to call them, employees, whatever, it may be that are doing these things, some of them are actually trafficking victims themselves and being
Yes.
forced as a form of labor trafficking to
Yes.
work and complete these transactions.
Right.
I mean, the layers of this are mind blowing and they're so deep, and that doesn't make it right. But I'm like, there's a victimization level on that victimization level.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a
It's insane.
snowball effect, and there is a focus to expand what they can do with this type of trafficking to gain even additional financial gain.
Yeah.
I will tell you that this activity is now beyond what drug traffickers used to do with trafficking drugs. It's
Hmm.
turned, this type of trafficking now has proven to be more profitable than even drug trafficking. And it's
Oh, it
more
is.
profitable because they use the same child repeatedly and then until they outgrow their age. And then they have more children coming down the line. So, and the other part of this, and again, I don't mean to go on, is child pornography. Um, People ask us all the time, when is a child old enough to have a device? And our
Yeah.
common answer to them is when you're prepared for that child to see pornography,
Yeah.
because that's how prevalent it is on the internet.
Hmm.
And whether they're looking for it or they're accidentally come across it, it's so prevalent that that's what's going on. And they're going to be exposed to it inevitably if they're on the internet.
Yeah.
So it's really a big problem from that standpoint. And again, I think that also lends itself to the idea that children don't perceive sex as being as taboo a subject as those of us who are now adults and have prior generations where you just didn't engage in that kind of stuff. Now to share photos, videos that are of sexual nature, to engage in sexual activity at a young age, it's become something that is like all too popular and accessible for these kids.
Yeah.
Um,
Without understanding the, outside of their circle of friends that they may be sharing stuff with, they don't understand that that's just the tipping point. But one thing that,
right,
that we'll talk to parents about, or that we, promote, is that education of helping your child understand, look, if an image is shared with them from a friend or a
right,
boyfriend or girlfriend, if they are underage, it is
right,
still considered child sexual abuse material by a definition in,
correct.
most jurisdictions. And then when it starts getting circulated or reshared, because kids
Hmm.
don't have those internal filters not to say, hey, to the
Right,
look what I just got, you're now
right,
actually distributing this. And I mean, there's maybe no criminal intent behind it,
right.
but there's still those ramifications. And back to like when you had just talked about, ultimately this leads to young boys a lot of the times taking their own lives.
Hmm.
For anybody who thinks, yeah, I don't know about that, like that seems pretty extreme, look up the name Jordan DeMay out of
Hmm.
Michigan. Look up the name James Timothy Woods from Ohio.
Hmm.
Female Amanda Todd from British Columbia, Canada. Uh,
Hmm.
these are some publicized ones, but this happens all too often. And these were
Right.
young, good student kids,
Hmm.
athletic, football team, track team,
Hmm.
and they fell into the hands of traffickers, a lot of them overseas. I know in Amanda Todd's case, it was a man in the Netherlands.
Hmm.
James Wood's case, it was an African organization. I forget for Jordan right now off the top of my head. But these are real things where these youth, in a moment of like lapse of judgment that they had,
Right.
shared a photo of themselves, began to be extorted, and saw no other way out but to take their own lives. And it is just
Correct.
shattering to these families. It happens, it's real. And we are just in such a day and age right now, Vic, you know this all too well, where this is a growing trend. It's a growing concern. It's just so possible that it can happen. And giving your kid a device, I come from a line train of thought that kids need technology because they have to
Sure.
learn it. If they aren't learning technology, they're going to get left behind in the school world and education, in the work world.
Right.
Like the jobs that exist for kids who are teenagers right now, or what they're going to have as career, probably don't even exist yet.
Right.
And so they need to know technology, but it's kind of like when you're given the keys to a set, like a car when you turn 16, like that comes
Right.
with great responsibility.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are, I mean, it may be a strong term, but my sense is we're programming kids in the use of technology, literally from kindergarten up through the grades of high school and college, because devices are being provided to them to
Hmm.
do schoolwork, even at the level of kindergartners. And once we place a device in a child's hands, now what happens is they have access to the internet. And
That's
as
right.
much as it's well intentioned to be able to learn the lessons that they're being given in school, it's like you said, it's like giving a kid a car and saying, here's the keys, now don't get in an accident. And maybe
Yeah,
someday
take
we'll
the
talk to
six
you
pack
about
of
how
beer
to
to go
drive
with it.
safe.
Yeah,
Right,
here's
right,
the keys and a
exactly.
six pack. Go have some fun.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's the reality of our world today.
Yeah,
Technology is here to stay. Technology is certainly subject to abuse. And when you have young kids who don't have the maturity level, don't have the sophistication of knowing that this could be dangerous, they're on an adventure. And where
yeah,
that adventure leads is what remains to be seen. And the one thing I do want to address very quickly, when we communicate with parents and adults that are supervising children, the natural tendency is for them to say, I don't know enough about the internet to be able to get involved in what I need to do to protect this child from being abused. And in fact, we joke about the fact that many adults, parents, and so on, grandparents will say, if they have a problem, first thing they do is ask their 15-year-old, hey, can you come help me clear this up on my computer? So
yeah,
there's an acceptance that kids know more about technology, know more about
100%.
the internet than the average adult does. And what we have done is, and this isn't the best way to put it, but we have actually gotten more practical about what you can do without having to be an expert on the internet, without
Yeah,
having to be a computer tech. And some of the things that we suggest to parents are things that they can easily do. For example, don't let your child take a device into their bedroom and shut their door and supposedly go to sleep, because we
yeah,
find the majority of kids get into trouble between midnight and 4 in the morning. Uh,
yeah,
and then kids don't get any sleep on top of that, and so they're going to school tired. So we tell them, look, one of the most effective methods you can use to control this is prohibit devices in their bedrooms when they go to bed at night. Put them
yeah.
in a
Have a
safe
central
place.
charging station in the
Yeah,
house. This is where
yeah,
devices go.
yeah, absolutely.
But I think with that though, Vic, like parents need to remember, I could be sitting here in the same room with my children watching a TV show, but if they're on a
Right,
device and I can't see what they're doing,
right.
but and I know with parents, there's been an argument back and forth. Well, I don't want to infringe upon their privacy. And I'm like, look, like we got to balance privacy and protection. And
Yeah,
I think that privacy level goes with age, maturity, and trust.
Right.
If it's going to look different for a 10, 11, 12-year-old than it is for a 16, 17-year-old who is about to be out on their own in the next year or two.
Right.
For me, it's if we're going to pay for your device or pay for you to have access for this,
Mm-hmm.
that device at any point in time, I can say, stop what you're doing. I want to see. I'm not going to dive,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm allowed to have a quick scroll and a quick look at, what it is that you're doing. I had this
Absolutely.
conversation last night with my daughter. We just moved from Ontario, Canada to Florida.
Mm.
And
Wow.
she's in a new school. She's here. She's just turned
Mm-hmm.
13, and we are going to softball last night. She's on a new softball team here.
Great.
And I look at her, I was like, hey, I'm like, because she doesn't have social media. I'm like, how are you feeling about, not having social media? And are you feeling
Mm-hmm.
left out or anything like this? And she's like, you know what? I was like, do your friends have it? I was like, I'm just trying to get a feel for the pulse, especially new school. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what are you seeing? She's like, well, she's like, there's a lot of kids my age actually that don't have social media still. But she's like, I felt a little bit this summer. So she played in her hometown on a softball team there as well. And she's like, there was a team group chat that they had on Snapchat. And she's
Mm.
like, I felt a little left out not having access to that. She's like, there's one or two other girls on the team. But she's like, overall, no. She's like, but she's also like, she's like, I really don't know what I'm missing either. So,
Mm-hmm.
it just like, I think just having open and honest conversations with kids about that, like my kids still have access to technology,
Right.
but it's in a controlled manner where, and we have open and honest conversations about it. Like, if you want
Absolutely.
this, we got to talk about these things. Yep, you
Right.
be uncomfortable as hell doing it, but we got to talk about it,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And it's a privilege for them to be provided the technology and allowed to
100%
use
it
it.
is. And you can use
Inevitably,
it
the
just like
parents
that.
are paying for it, if not for the actual device, for the internet service provider, et cetera, et
Everything.
cetera. And and that's the other challenge when it comes to trying to encourage parents to be more proactive is, they know that their kids typically are going to uh, essentially want to take issue with anything they try to do to oversee what they're doing on their devices and on the internet.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing you would run into sometimes literally would be to tell them you can't have a device in your bedroom when you go to bed at night. And of
Hmm.
course they're going to be accused of don't trust me, you don't love me, on and
Oh,
on.
I do love
You're
you, and
the
that's why I'm
only
not letting you
parent.
have
Right. None of my friends' parents do this, blah, 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 blah. And I tell parents, I say, look, you have a choice. You can either perform as a parent or you can be their friend, quote unquote.
it.
If
Hmm.
you're their friend, then you're not helping them to
That's
be
right.
responsible. You're not helping to prevent them from becoming victimized.
Yeah.
And so there has to be a clear distinction that I'm your parent.
Yeah.
And
I got my whole
therefore,
life later on to be friends with you when you're an adult.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's really unfortunate because parents want their kids to love them. Obviously, parents want their kids to like them. But this is a contentious area that inevitably causes a lot of conflict, and you got to be prepared for that and understand that the conflict is worth preventing them from becoming a victim. Because I
Yeah.
also tell
You have
parents
to you have
once
to
it
weigh that
happens,
out.
right, you can't, once it happens, you can't undo it. You
That's
can't
right.
go back. So, anyway, yeah.
Yeah. With parents too, like they got to understand, you ask, they think, okay, this person doing it, like this is the guy who's chain smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee in his parents'
Mhm.
basement. And it's not like, I mean, you and I talked about it, major airline organization, pilot, landed
Right,
in San Francisco International Airport and was
right,
arrested right there because of his possession of child sexual abuse material. A pilot
right,
in charge of safely delivering hundreds of people from city to city across
right.
America doing this.
Yes. Mhm.
It, anybody, like it could be, and parents, if you're listening, it's not, we used to always think, you got to be careful of strangers. I don't think it's strangers you got to be careful of. Tell your kids to be careful of people who act strangely. As a
Right.
parent, look at people who act strangely or interact with,
Correct.
child or children, teens in a way that's, you know, different, right? It's okay to question. It's okay to follow your gut
Right.
instinct on these things.
Absolutely. And I think it's important not to get caught up on what that person's standing is in the community. We just had a case of an arrest of a Catholic priest who was in charge of the youth programs, and he was engaging
Yeah.
in sexual abuse of the children. And nothing against Catholic religion or priests, but the fact of the matter is anyone who is responsible for interacting with children in any capacity needs to be aware that the parents have the right to make sure, to the degree that they can, that this is a trustworthy individual and that they're not automatically to be trusted strictly on the basis of their title or their status in the community. And it's a hard pill to swallow.
100%.
I mean, but it's reality. So I mean, that's the bottom
That's right.
line. And one other point that we just have recently acquired some data on, and I find it interesting because we can talk about the threat of predators and child pornographers and sextortionists, but we've determined that teens between the ages of 10 and 19 suffer brain disruption by excessive internet use, which can be as little as 4.8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
The more they have focused on a computer screen, the more they're focused on the internet, and the longer they utilize it at any given time in one sitting, it's creating physiological and psychological disruptions to their brain matter. And I mean,
What a thing to combat when they're sitting in schools now, spending that time, even in classes, learning, using these
right,
tools in front of a screen all day long. They're not looking at a
right.
blackboard anymore or a notebook.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I will say there was a report just this morning about school districts beginning to take a more proactive role in prohibiting cell phones on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And I applaud that because it's obviously another way for these kids to become distracted, another way for them to get on the screen time, and the schools have a right to assert that authority.
I think Texas has banned it. I think Texas has passed a House bill
Right,
statewide that electronic devices are not allowed in schools.
right. And a number of states are doing that now, and I can tell you that they even have what they call little pockets that they will put the kids' devices in and put them in a secure location, and the
Oh,
child
good.
doesn't get it back until the end of the school day. And they have to do that. They have to take some proactive steps to at least not have the children walking down the hallway looking at screens on their phones and
Mhm.
interacting all the time on that. It's bad enough that they have to use computers for learning, but
Yeah.
then you give them the freedom to walk around the hallways with their phones, and it's just more of that mindset and focus on electronics that, again, to access can actually do damage to their brain functions. So
Yeah.
but you'll never convince a kid of that. So,
No, no, you won't. And I mean, but it's the world they've grown up in, right?
yeah,
It's have to
yeah,
accept it as
absolutely.
parents, and we have to
Absolutely.
do the best we can with what we have now. But I think
Right.
awareness and education around this
Right.
topic is so huge. So, Vic, I thank you for the work that you're doing with the Idaho Internet Child Crimes Against Children, ICAC.
ICAC. There
Vic,
you go.
what to finish this up, what
Sure.
excites you about the future and the fight against internet crimes against children?
Uh, honestly, we'll never get rid of the technology. We'll never get rid of the the desire and the interest of kids to access it and to use it as often as they can, and to use it sometimes all too often irresponsibly. Um, so our only real hope is to educate parents, educate
Mhm.
the teachers, educate student leaders in the churches, and essentially to make them aware of the degree of threat that this technology can represent to children that they have an influence over, and to be proactive, not to
Yeah.
just ignore it, not to just think, and we encounter this even here in Idaho, oh, that happens in the big cities, New York, LA, Washington, Chicago. It's not happening here in Idaho. Well, that image no longer flies. And the
Yeah,
reality is it's happening everywhere.
it
And
is.
so I think that the only real answer is for acknowledgement and recognition that this is a threat to their children, and to understand that unless they address it proactively, they're allowing the potential for their child to become a future victim.
Absolutely. Well, Vic, from safety planning of the '84 LA Olympics to 41 years ago to
Yeah,
safety
yeah,
planning now for the digital safety of children. Thank
right.
you for all of the work that you do. Um, for parents out there, for executives, for anybody listening, I want to make this point actually for workplace executives who are listening. These are crimes that are silently happening within your organizations.
Yeah,
You don't realize it. People don't come and report it. They don't come and say, hey, my kid, I found out, was, extorted last night for a sexual reason online, and things just aren't quite, right in my head or right now. So I'm not really
right.
going to be present at work right now. Or, I found out this about trafficking or something.
Mhm.
It's happening. People just don't report it. They don't know where to turn to. They don't know how to report it. There's fear,
Mhm.
there's embarrassment, there's shame, stigma attached to it. So they don't, but it's happening. And it does contribute directly back to employee engagement and employee wellness. That's a huge thing that we're advocates for and trying to get greater awareness out there about this topic and
Mhm.
wanting to see organizations start to educate their employees on these topics, knowing that statistically speaking, it's happening within their four walls.
Right.
So just keep that in mind, no matter who it is that you're listening to. Don't ever assume it won't happen to you or your child, because it does. It's that simple. It's that easy. Online predators who do this, they are so well versed at their craft. They are very good at it. They are patient, and as parents, you need to win every single time. They only need to win once. They got a database full list of names and kids, and as long as they're getting some to comply, they're winning. So as parents, you always have to be diligent. You have to win every single time. Vic, where can our listeners, where can they find you guys at?
Well, we have a website, and it's the ICACcoalition.org. So it's IICACC, and the last C of the ICAC is the first C of coalition. So it's OALITION.org. And
Awesome.
we're online for that. We also are present on Facebook. But let me just add very quickly. Although I think that we're one of a few organizations that focus on this subject matter exclusively, every law enforcement agency that has a certain degree of prevention built into their agency uh, offers some form of presentation, education, and awareness. And they do it for free. And like us, we schedule it at the individuals that's requesting it at their convenience, their day, the time, whatever will work to potentially facilitate having that presentation and encouraging people to attend. So, my advice would be, if you are interested, certainly reach out to the agencies that are in your area, contact them about getting a presentation and learning about the specifics of what a threat this is to children everywhere. And I just would say that it's a never-ending battle, and we can't do it without parents and adult supervision that will actively work with us in doing this.
Take the village.
That's a village. Yes.
That's great.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Vic, so much for being here, everybody. It's been another great episode of Shield the Vulnerable, Untold Stories. We'll see you on the next one.